I still remember the day I found the letter in my mailbox. It was ordinary. The pale ivory cardstock I saw every morning, but this time the university seal at the top looked ominous. My heart pounded as I slit the envelope open, pulling out a single sheet of paper. "Dear Ms. Everly Sinclair," it read, "it has come to our attention that your parents—" I squinted at the next words, unable to breathe. "Have formally requested the revocation of your scholarship effective immediately." My world tilted. For the past 4 years, my scholarship had been the cornerstone of my dreams. One I had earned through sleepless nights in the lab, through teetering on deadlines, through proving I belonged in the infinitesimal world of quantum materials research. My name, Everly Sinclair, had become synonymous with drive, passion, and purpose, and now my own parents had pulled the rug out from under me. I sank to the cracked pavement outside the letterbox, fingers trembling as I clutched the paper to my chest. It had been my mother's handwriting on the formal request, and my father's signature. In elegant looping script, they had declared I was not to receive another cent of funding. "Our daughter has chosen her own path," they wrote elsewhere, "and it no longer aligns with our values or our expectations." I pressed my forehead to the cool concrete, a single sob ripping from my throat. Everything I had sacrificed, my scholarship, my research, my future, seemed to evaporate in an instant. I thought I was prepared for any obstacle in the lab, a failed experiment, a broken instrument, a paper rejection. But betrayal by my own parents? That was an equation I could not solve. "Everly?" a voice called, and I looked up to see Maya Winters, my lab partner and closest friend, rushing toward me. Her chest heaved as she held out her arms. "What's wrong? I saw you stumble." I handed her the letter, words swimming before my eyes. She read it, her brow furrowing. No, this can't be real." "It is," I choked. They want me off the scholarship." Maya dropped beside me, pulling me close. "You deserve this more than anyone. We'll find a way." Her words, fierce and unwavering, were a lifeline amid the chaos swirling in my mind. Later that evening, I returned to our apartment with Maya trailing behind, carrying 2 steaming mugs of chamomile tea. The tiny London flat we shared was littered with scientific journals, empty coffee cups, and sticky notes in Maya's immaculate handwriting. We curled up on the threadbare couch, and over tea I spilled everything. My parents' expectations, their disappointment in my choice of research, their insistence I pursue the family business in finance. I told her how my experiments on graphene-coated semiconductors had captured the faculty's attention, and how I'd poured my soul into every dataset. Maya listened, her dark curls cascading over her shoulder. "They think you should be comfortable, playing it safe. But you," she tapped my forehead, smiling through tears, "you were born to push boundaries." I stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks that formed constellations in my memory. Professor Whitman's voice echoed in my mind. "Sinclair, you have the makings of a great mind. Don't let anyone dim your light." As midnight approached, I packed my bag. I couldn't face sleeping on my bed in that flat, where every corner reminded me of the future I thought I had. I needed a plan, a path forward, one that didn't rely on my parents' approval. I tipped my hat, the first hat I ever owned, a vintage olive green fedora I'd found in a thrift shop, and slipped out into the foggy streets of London. The city lights glowed against damp asphalt, and for the first time I felt the cold bite of uncertainty. But beneath it, a spark ignited. If my parents wouldn't support me, I'd find a way to support myself. I hailed a black cab to King's Cross Station, my phone pressed to my ear. "Maya, I need to meet someone." The commanding tone on the other end belonged to Dr. Alistair Kerr, head of the Institute of Theoretical Sciences in Edinburgh. He'd emailed me weeks ago, praising my thesis on quantum tunneling and nanolattices. "He wants to discuss your research. Tonight." My voice trembled even as determination set in. "I'm going to Edinburgh." The cab skidded around a corner as I closed my eyes. A single thought anchored me. They tried to break me, but they don't decide my destiny. I do. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. I hadn't slept a wink on the overnight train. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the moment I read that letter. My parents' betrayal printed in black ink. My future evaporating. Dawn broke as the conductor called my name, and I stumbled onto the platform at Edinburgh Waverley, fog clinging to the ancient stone like a shroud. A chill settled in my bones that I welcomed. It was a concrete reminder that I was alive, and this was real. A sleek, dark sedan waited for me. Behind the wheel sat a driver in a crisp suit who held up a placard, Evilly Sinclair. My first name spelled wrong, and yet I hardly noticed. I dropped my duffel bag in the back seat and sank against the leather, my mind a storm of hope and fear. Dr. Kerr's residence? I managed, voice raspy. He nodded. The car glided through narrow streets where stone facades bore the weight of centuries. Edinburgh unveiled itself like a waking dream. Gargoyles perched above alleys, cathedrals rising in staggered silhouettes, the castle looming like a sentinel. I'd visited once as a teenager on a school trip, but this was different. It felt like destiny. When the driver slowed to a halt before an elegant Georgian townhouse near the morass of gardens, my heart hammered. I paid without glancing at the fare and climbed out, tightening my coat against the Scottish breeze. I rang the bell, each chime echoing through my chest. The door opened to reveal Dr. Alistair Kerr, slender, silver-haired, his sharp eyes softened by a welcoming smile. Everly Sinclair, he said, taking my hand in a firm shake. Welcome to Edinburgh. His accent curled around my name, imbuing it with warmth. He ushered me into a drawing room lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, overflowing with tomes on physics, engineering, and philosophy. A fire crackled in the hearth. The room smelled of old paper and Earl Grey. Thank you for coming on such short notice, he began, gesturing to a velvet armchair where I sat. I've reviewed your thesis in depth. Your work on graphene lattice resonance could revolutionize low-power transistors. I'd like to offer you a position as my postdoctoral fellow at the Institute of Theoretical Sciences. His words tumbled over me like a gentle tide. A stipend, laboratory resources, access to the university's supercomputer cluster. I blinked, struggling to reconcile this gift with the fear that had shadowed me. I'm honored, I whispered, voice thick. He leaned forward, his gaze piercing. There's one condition. I want you to present your preliminary findings at the International Materials Summit next month in Geneva. If all goes well, we'll pursue full-scale prototyping. Geneva. The thought made my pulse race. Standing before the world's leading scientists. It was the chance of a lifetime. As we discussed logistics, I realized something profound. I no longer needed my parents' support. Here, I had someone who believed in me, someone who saw my potential and wanted to nurture it. The gratitude I felt for Dr. Kerr flooded my chest. That night, I lodged at the Institute's guest quarters, unpacking my bag with reverent care. I pored over my notes, organizing data tables, simulations, and the half-finished draft of my Geneva presentation. As I sifted through research, I sensed a subtle shift inside me. Fear was giving way to resolve. Over the next days, I settled into the rhythm of the Institute. Mornings began with coffee in the Commons, where I greeted postdocs from Japan, Brazil, and Nigeria, each chasing their own scientific dreams. Their stories mirrored mine, obstacles overcome, barriers broken. In the lab, I donned a white coat and safety goggles, reacquainting myself with the array of electronics, microscopes, and vacuum chambers. Maya's voice echoed over the phone whenever I hit a snag. Trust your instincts, Everly. You've come too far to turn back. Evenings were spent in Dr. Kerr's study. He challenged me with questions, probing my methodology, suggesting new angles, how lattice defects might be tweaked to control electron mobility, how temperature variations could reveal hidden resonance peaks. My confidence swelled as I realized how deeply I understood the material. Each answer I gave felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. On the fourth day, I stood before a gleaming prototype, a wafer of graphene interlaced with nanoscale channels. The pattern glowed faintly under the scanning electron microscope. Outside, the dome of the sky darkened into amber. I calibrated the device and initiated the first test. My breath caught as the data scrolled across the monitor. Resonance frequencies stabilized at lower thresholds than any existing model. The numbers soared beyond my predictions. I looked up to catch Dr. Kerr's gaze through the glass partition. He raised his eyebrows and offered a triumphant nod. In that look I saw approval, respect, and the promise of what was to come. But as elation surged, a niggling thought crept in. My parents had cut me off to protect their own interests. What if they tried to sabotage me again, this time through the university or my reputation? I pushed the doubt aside and focused on the summit. I would let my work speak for itself. Late that night, alone in the lab, I typed the subject line for an email to Professor Whitman back in London. Request for reference and support at Geneva Summit. My fingers hovered over the keys. I closed my eyes. Sinclair, I whispered to the empty room, show them who you are. A knock at the door startled me. Dr. Kerr stepped in, holding a leather-bound folder. I thought you might find this useful, he said. My notes from last year's summit. He placed it on the bench. I picked up the folder, running my fingers over embossed gold letters. Thank you, I won't let you down. He smiled. I know. Either way, you'll make them remember your name. I nodded, determination blazing brighter than the lab's sterile lights. Tomorrow, I would begin the journey to Geneva. And nothing, not even betrayal, could stand in my way. The sunrise over Lake Geneva cast a pearlescent glow across the water as I stepped out of the taxi, heart pounding in rhythm with the clatter of my heels on the cobblestone plaza. The Palais des Nations loomed before me, an imposing edifice of pale stone and soaring columns that housed the world's foremost minds in science and diplomacy. My breath hitched as I clutched my presentation folder, embossed with my name and the Institute's insignia, Everly Sinclair, Postdoctoral Fellow, Institute of Theoretical Sciences. Inside, the hall buzzed with murmurs in half a dozen languages. Men and women in crisp suits and flowing scarves exchanged polite nods, their expressions courteous yet competitive. Banners flanked the entrance. International Materials Summit 2025, Geneva. My palms felt clammy against the smooth leather of my portfolio. Every face I passed seemed to weigh the merits of their neighbor's research. Did they see me as an equal, or an inexperienced imposter? I spotted Professor Whitman in the crowd, his silvery hair and upright posture as familiar as my own reflection. Relief washed over me at the sight of his approving smile. He raised a hand in greeting. Everly, welcome, he called, his voice carrying across the murmurs. He guided me toward a side alcove where a cluster of researchers examined a display of semiconductor wafers. We're all eager to see your talk. Dr. Kerr's recommendation holds weight here. My chest tightened. Whitman had been my undergraduate advisor, the first to recognize my talent. His presence served as both comfort and pressure. I nodded, squeezing his arm. Thank you, Professor. I'm nervous. He chuckled softly. Good. A little nerves sharpen the mind. But remember, you're here because your work deserves attention. Stand tall, speak clearly, and let the data speak for itself. I watched him weave back into the crowd, his advice looping in my mind. I adjusted my blazer and exhaled slowly. It was nearly time. In the presentation hall, rows of velvet chairs faced a raised dais. A massive projection screen dominated the front wall. I found my seat in the front row, pulling out my laptop to run through slide animations. Around me, delegates finalized notes, flicked through proceedings, booklets, and sipped coffee. The air smelled faintly of espresso and polished wood. A hush fell as the session moderator took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Session 2, Advances in Graphene Applications. Our final speaker is Dr. Everly Sinclair, Institute of Theoretical Sciences, Edinburgh. She will present on, quote, lattice resonance tuning in graphene-enhanced semiconductors. Please welcome Dr. Sinclair. My throat went dry. I stood, smoothing my skirt, and walked to the podium. The applause was polite but brief. I tapped the microphone, adjusting its height. My name is Dr. Everly Sinclair, I began, voice quivering before steadiness took over. Today I will share our findings on how nanoscale lattice resonance in graphene-coated semiconductors can lower power thresholds and enhance signal stability. I clicked the remote. Slide 1 appeared, a series of electron micrographs showing the pristine graphene lattice. Slide 2 charted resonance frequencies across temperature gradients. As I spoke, my initial tremor faded. The familiar flow of explaining my research enveloped me. Each term, quantum confinement, electron mobility, resonance modulation, felt like an extension of my own pulse. I guided the audience through experimental setups: vacuum chambers maintained at cryogenic temperatures, laser interferometry systems calibrated to nanometer precision, and data acquisition software synchronized across global time servers. At each juncture, I highlighted challenges: fabrication defects, thermal noise, and signal drift. Then I presented solutions: annealing protocols, lattice patterning techniques, and adaptive feedback loops. Slides scroll to graphs of performance benchmarks. The bars climbed steadily above existing models. A ripple of murmured astonishment circled the hall. We achieved a 12% reduction in energy consumption without compromising signal fidelity, I stated, meeting eyes along the first few rows. Our prototypes demonstrate viability for integration into next-generation low-power electronics. A hand shot up near the center aisle. A researcher with a sharp chin and a charcoal suit rose. Dr. Sinclair, how do you address potential long-term degradation under cyclical thermal stress? I paused, recognizing the question as both valid and critical. An excellent point. We conducted accelerated lifespan tests, thermal cycling from -40 to 85 degrees Celsius for 10,000 cycles. Our annealed lattice maintained structural integrity, showing less than 2% performance drift. We're refining passivation layers to further mitigate degradation. He nodded, seemingly satisfied. Another question came, a linguist voice from the back. Each exchange honed my confidence. When I concluded, the final slide displayed a bold statement: graphene-enhanced semiconductors, a path to sustainable high-efficiency electronics. The applause washed over me, stronger this time, resonating deep in my chest. I smiled, feeling the weight of my journey lift. Backstage, I exhaled, cheeks flushed. Dr. Kerr and Professor Whitman were there. Kerr's eyes glinted with pride. Whitman's smile was broader than before. "You were phenomenal," Kerr said, clapping me on the shoulder. I laughed, relief unfurling. "Thank you for everything." But as euphoria ebbed, another thought crawled in. My parents would hear of this. They'd know I succeeded without them. How would they react? Would it inflame their resentment? I shook my head, focusing on the moment. A well-dressed delegate from Switzerland approached. "Dr. Sinclair, I'm from Helvetic Microsystems. We'd like to discuss potential collaboration." Opportunity blossomed. I exhaled deeply, nerves replaced by determination. My research had doors swinging open across Europe. I just needed to walk through them. I spent the afternoon fielding inquiries, joining impromptu meetings in sunlit courtyards, and sketching blueprints on napkins. When evening came, I found a quiet bench by the lake, the last rays of sun painting ripples of gold. Geneva's mountains rose on the horizon, silent watchers of my triumph. I pulled out my phone and drafted a message to Maya and Dr. Whitman. Presentation successful, champagne pending, I'm one step closer. I hesitated before hitting send. Then, this is just the beginning. The sun had barely risen over Lake Geneva's placid waters when my phone buzzed again. I stared bleary-eyed at the screen. Multiple missed calls from an unknown number, followed by an email notification from Helvetic Microsystems. The subject line read, "Collaboration proposal, immediate meeting requested." My head throbbed with fatigue and exhilaration. The night before, after the summit session, had blurred into celebration. Champagne on a rooftop terrace, laughter mingling with clinking glasses as Dr. Kerr toasted my success. But sleep had been elusive. The magnitude of what lay ahead refused to let me rest. I dressed quickly in my travel-wrinkled blazer and stepped into the crisp air. The institute driver whisked me back to the Palais des Nations, where I met the Helvetic team in a mirrored conference room overlooking the lake. Their delegation, business executives, and lead engineers, presented a glossy pitch deck outlining how their fabrication facilities could mass-produce my graphene semiconductors. It was an intoxicating vision, my research powering next-generation devices worldwide. Yet beneath the promise lay questions: equity stakes, intellectual property rights, and the potential for corporate restrictions on academic publication. My stomach twisted. I could see the headlines, "Sinclair sells out to industry." My integrity, the core of who I was, felt at risk. So I paused. I asked for time to consider their offer, promising to reconvene after additional meetings at the Institute. As I walked away, I realized the path forward was not merely scientific, but ethical, balancing profit and progress, vision and values. Back at the Institute, my inbox pinged again, a formal notice from my parents' solicitor. My heart sank. They'd responded to news of my summit success by demanding any accolades or grants be redirected to them. The letter, penned by a high-powered law firm, invoked clauses in our scholarship agreement and my mother's alma mater records. Their ultimatum: desist from any patent applications or face legal action for breach of parental covenant. Anger flared hot within me. They sought to control my accomplishments and profit from them. But the indignation also steeled my resolve. I would not back down. I summoned Maya over video chat. Her face appeared, concern etched in the dim glow of her study lamp. I relayed the threats, swallowing back the tremor in my voice. "Everly, you can't let them intimidate you," Maya said. "Your research and your rights, those are yours. We need a lawyer who specializes in intellectual property." "I'll find one today." Relief and gratitude flooded me. "Thank you. I can't do this alone." Maya remained silent for a beat. Then, "You're not alone." With her support, and Dr. Kerr's unwavering backing, I prepared to fortify my position. In the lab, I immersed myself deeper into refining the lattice resonance protocols, gathering data that would underpin patent filings. Each experiment felt like armor, shielding me from external threats. One evening, Dr. Kerr found me hunched over the electron microscope. He placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "How are you holding up?" he asked. I looked up, exhaustion in my eyes. "They're trying to steal my work." He nodded gravely. "Then we make sure your work is protected. I've arranged for the Institute's legal counsel to draft provisional patents for your discoveries. We'll file them within the next week." A lifeline. I squeezed his hand. "I don't know how to thank you." He smiled. "Just keep making breakthroughs." In the days that followed, I balanced high-stakes negotiations with Helvetic Microsystems alongside meetings with patent attorneys. The Institute's counsel, Madame Fontaine, a formidable woman with a razor-sharp intellect, guided me through drafting claims, reviewing prior art searches, and securing provisional patent applications under my name and the Institute's. The process was meticulous, defining specific lattice harmonics, outlining fabrication steps, and codifying data points. Between legal sessions, I continued experiments. Each night, the lab lights burned long after the corridors emptied. I calibrated resonator frequencies, tweaked annealing curves, and ran stress tests that pushed prototypes to their endurance limits. Data streamed in, performance metrics surpassing benchmarks, new resonance peaks revealing unexplored potential, and stability thresholds widening with each iteration. Yet amid the excitement, a nagging emptiness gnawed at me. Success often felt hollow without someone to share it. I longed for Maya's comforting presence and for the reassurance of my own identity beyond the title of Dr. Sinclair. In fleeting moments, I questioned whether my parents' betrayal had fractured me more deeply than I wanted to admit. One morning, after a grueling 12-hour lab session, I collapsed in the common room with a battered takeout container. The door creaked, and Professor Whitman entered, carrying a stack of journals. "Everly, how are you?" he asked, adjusting his glasses. I shrugged, tearing a piece of naan. "Busy, tired, betrayed." He set the journals down and sat opposite me. "I read the letter from your parents. I'm sorry they acted so spitefully." I swallowed. I thought parental support was unconditional. Whitman's gaze softened. "Sometimes, those who love us fear our independence more than our failure. They try to hold us back to protect us, but they end up hurting us instead." He paused. "But you're not defined by their fears. You're defined by your courage." His words warmed me. "Thank you." He smiled. "Now, have you considered how to scale this beyond the lab?" Geneva was just the start. I thought of Helvetic's proposal, of the patent filings, and of the Institute's promise. An idea crystallized, a spin-off venture, co-owned by the Institute and a consortium of ethical investors, to commercialize graphene semiconductors under my guidance. It would ensure academic freedom, fair profit sharing, and a commitment to sustainable practices. I outlined the plan to Whitman and Dr. Kerr, who immediately recognized its potential. By evening, we pitched the concept to a small group of private donors assembled by the Institute. Our proposal emphasized transparency, academic collaboration, and long-term growth, rather than short-term gains. The donors, philanthropists, and tech entrepreneurs, listened intently, their interest piqued. As I concluded, one investor asked, "Dr. Sinclair, what do you hope to achieve in 10 years?" I paused, looking at each face around the table. "I want to see devices powered by my research improving quality of life, bringing affordable medical diagnostics to remote villages, reducing energy consumption in data centers, and inspiring the next generation of scientists. More than profits, I want a legacy of progress." A hush settled, then nods of approval. The investors exchanged glances before one stood. "We're in." Relief and triumph swelled within me. We shook hands, sealing the foundational agreement for GraphenX Innovations, our newly minted venture. That night, I stood on my balcony overlooking Edinburgh's skyline, the stars shimmering above. My phone buzzed with congratulatory messages, but my eyes fell on a single unread email from my parents. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. I took a deep breath and deleted it. Tomorrow, the real work would begin, building GraphenX from the ground up, navigating corporate landscapes, and ensuring my research served the world on my terms. And in that moment, I realized betrayal had forged me into something stronger. Now I would prove that my destiny belonged to no one but myself. Late winter frost clung to the windows of GraphenX's temporary headquarters, a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Edinburgh. Our makeshift offices buzzed with the hum of computers, the clatter of prototype assembly, and the hopeful chatter of a team bound by a shared vision. I unlocked the door at dawn, my breath visible in the frigid air as I flipped on the lights. "Good morning, everyone," I greeted, voice echoing in the cavernous space. 3 months had passed since the investor's handshake. GraphenX had grown from a kernel of an idea into a fledgling company with 25 employees, engineers, lab technicians, business strategists, and a handful of marketing experts. Maya had flown in to help oversee project management, her presence a beacon of comfort amid the chaos. Our first objective: to refine the prototype wafer assemblies and prepare for a demonstration to potential strategic partners. These wafers incorporated my latest breakthroughs, gradient lattice modulation and molecular layer passivation, to push performance beyond our initial Geneva findings. In the lab, I peered through a microscope at a wafer, delicately mounted on a silicon substrate. The interwoven graphene channels shimmered under the LED illumination. I adjusted the focus and measured resonance frequencies with the portable spectrum analyzer. The results were promising, but inconsistency remained. A handful of devices exhibited signal decay under post-annealing stress. I straightened and called over Dr. Seth Lang, our lead materials scientist. "Seth, the batch from last night shows 7 out of 10 units with drift beyond acceptable thresholds. We need to tighten our annealing curve. Perhaps extend the slow cooling hold at 200 degrees Celsius." He nodded, scanning the data. "I'll adjust the thermocouple calibration and rerun the cycle. We'll have new results by noon." I immersed myself in troubleshooting. Each variable, temperature gradient, gas composition, substrate adhesion, could tip the scale between success and failure. As midday approached, I took a rare moment outside, inhaling the crisp air. Maya joined me, a travel mug of coffee in hand. "How's it going?" she asked, handing me the mug. I exhaled, wrapping my hands around the warmth. "Progress, but we're plateauing on yield." She gave me a sympathetic look. "Give me 5 minutes with the production plan. I might have a workflow tweak." As I returned inside, the pantry's old radio crackled with news from London. GraphenX's seed funding had been featured in the Financial Times. I paused, chest swelling at the thought that our venture was making headlines. Back in the lab, Seth called, "Results are in. 15% better stability, but still not consistent." I pulled him aside. We need more data points. Schedule continuous testing overnight, both at cryogenic and elevated temperatures. And loop in the AI analytics team to flag any correlation patterns. By late afternoon, monitors flickered with streams of real-time data. Our AI algorithms, trained on months of lab logs, highlighted a correlation between slight humidity variations in the clean room and early signal drift. A revelation. Even microscopic moisture absorption on the graphene surface could influence resonance. Later, Maya and I gathered the team. Thanks to our analytics, we've identified humidity control as a critical factor. We're installing additional desiccant modules and tightening chamber seals. Applause broke out, small but earnest. It was in these breakthroughs, no matter how minute, that our dream took shape. Weeks blurred into deadlines. We prepped for a pitch to National Instruments in Munich, a potential partner able to integrate our wafers into their sensor arrays. I crafted slides showcasing our iterative improvements, reliability data, and a roadmap for commercialization. 2 days before departure, an unexpected email arrived from my mother's solicitor. They had filed an injunction to freeze international transfer of any GrapheneX funds, pending review of the scholarship covenant. I read the terse legalese with growing dread. They were escalating, hoping to choke our resources. My heart pounded. I called Dr. Kerr, who connected me to Madame Fontaine. The Institute's legal team moved swiftly, contesting the injunction and defending GrapheneX's corporate structure. As the legal battles raged, I prepared for Munich, the weight of outside forces pressing down. On the morning of the flight, I stood at the warehouse entrance, suitcase in hand. My gaze lingered on the flickering fluorescent lights, the rows of prototype shelves, the whiteboard scrawled with equations and timelines. This place, GrapheneX, was my creation. Despite the pressure, I felt a surge of pride. In Munich, the National Instruments headquarters was a fortress of glass and steel. Their executive conference room overlooked the Isar River, midday sun bouncing off chrome surfaces. I donned my best power suit, a departure from the lab coat I wore daily. As I walked in, I saw their CTO, Marcus Vogel, extend a hand. Dr. Sinclair, welcome. We've been following your progress. Please take a seat. I presented with precision, wafer performance curves, reliability metrics, and case studies of simulated device integrations. Marcus interjected with probing questions, scaling yields, cost per square centimeter, and projected timelines. I answered each confidently, drawing on months of preparation. After the technical session, we moved to the negotiation round. Terms for licensing, joint development funds, and exclusivity clauses flashed on the screen. Marcus leaned forward, eyes intent. We're interested, but we need assurance that your IP is secure and unrestricted. I summoned my composure. Our IP is fully owned by GrapheneX, with provisional patents filed. We guarantee freedom to operate and have legal counsel on standby to resolve any disputes. He nodded slowly. Excellent. I believe we can reach an agreement by week's end. Relief washed over me. The partnership with National Instruments would vault GrapheneX into global supply chains and validate our technology. On the flight back, I closed my eyes, thoughts drifting between anticipation and exhaustion. I replayed each negotiation point, each lab breakthrough, each legal skirmish. I realized that building GrapheneX wasn't just about science. It was a battle on multiple fronts: technical, corporate, legal, and deeply personal. 2 weeks later, I returned to Edinburgh to find news waiting. The injunction had been lifted, and legal counsel secured a summary judgment confirming our corporate autonomy. Simultaneously, National Instruments signed the letter of intent. GrapheneX was poised to move from prototype to production. That evening, Maya and I stood in the center of our warehouse-turned-lab. Engineers hailed us, toasting with lukewarm soda. We clinked cans. To GrapheneX, Maya said. And to you, Everly Sinclair. I smiled, tears threatening. To everyone who believed in what we could achieve. We drank, the cheers echoing off brick walls. For the first time, I felt complete, surrounded by a team, a purpose, and a future of my own making. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. The coming months would bring scaling challenges, industry scrutiny, and the decision of whether to take GrapheneX public. But whatever lay ahead, I knew this. I would face it on my own terms, and no one, not even the shadow of my past, could derail me. Dawn broke over Edinburgh once more as I strode into the Graphinex facility, determination blazing in my chest. The warm hum of production equipment greeted me, furnaces cycling, robotic arms aligning wafers, and the steady rhythm of conveyor belts moving prototype chips from station to station. Today marked a milestone, our first pilot run of 50 wafers under real-world manufacturing conditions. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of preparation. We'd upgraded cleanroom protocols, fine-tuned deposition chambers, and calibrated temperature controls to the 100th of a degree. Every variable had been accounted for, or so I thought. In the control room, I joined Seth Lang and our automation lead, Javier Morales, who monitored live data streams. Monitors flashed yield percentages, defect rates, and environmental metrics. As the count climbed toward the halfway mark, my pulse quickened, then stalled. The yield plateaued at 37%, far below our target of 80%. Seth ran simulations while Javier cross-checked sensor logs. "It's not the annealing curve," Seth said, eyes narrowed at code cascading across the screen. "The deposition uniformity is off. We're seeing thickness variations greater than 10 nanometers. My stomach twisted. A 10 nanometer discrepancy could wreak havoc on resonance consistency. I traced my finger on the monitor. What about substrate alignment? Any drift in the robotic calibrations? Javier scrolled through logs. Microdrift detected in actuator B3 over long cycles. It's subtle, less than a micron, but enough to misalign the lattice pattern. I inhaled sharply. Every detail mattered. Shift actuator calibration to dynamic feedback control. Increase recalibration frequency to every cycle. And escalate production by running smaller batches until we nail the parameters. Javier and Seth exchanged determined glances. Within hours, we reprogrammed the control sequences and ran a second batch under the new protocol. As I watched the yield climb, 50%, 67%, relief unfurled in my chest. By late afternoon, the count hit 82%. Success. Cheers erupted in the control room. The team hugged, high-fived, and basked in the triumph of a challenge overcome. I allowed myself a rare smile, the enormity of the moment sinking in. Graphinex had proven it could scale, and I had led the effort. Late that night, I returned to my office, exhaustion weighing on my shoulders. Papers and prototypes lay scattered across my desk. I sank into my chair, closing my eyes, but sleep evaded me. My thoughts roamed back to my parents, their solicitors' final threats, the unspoken questions they'd raised about my independence, their disappointment etched into every word of that revocation letter. A photograph on my desk caught my eye. Me and Maya at graduation, mortarboards tilted and arms raised. Back then, I'd felt unstoppable. But beneath the triumph lay the strain of expectations, my parents' vision of success, which had never aligned with mine. I grabbed my phone and dialed my mother's number. My heart pounded as it rang. Voicemail. I left a brief message. "Mom, it's Everly. I hope you're well. I just wanted you to know Graphinex's pilot run exceeded targets. I'd love to talk. Please call me." Then I hit send before doubt could paralyze me. Hours passed. I watched the status bar under my message flick from sent to read. Then, silence. Morning brought a new challenge. Press inquiries. Tech journals wanted interviews. Investors sought updates. Industry watchdogs monitored our IP filings. I found myself thrust into the spotlight, balancing public relations with scientific rigor. Though exhilarating, it felt surreal. This scientist who once trembled at letters from her parents, now fielding questions from global media. By midday, exhaustion peaked. I retreated to the rooftop terrace, where fresh air mingled with the city's hum. Maya joined me, concern writing lines around her eyes. "You look tired," she observed, handing me a coffee. I sighed. "I am." I reached out to my mom. Her lips tightened. "Any response?" "None." She read my message, but didn't reply. My voice cracked. She put a hand on my back. "They're scared. You're moving too fast, breaking the mold. Give them time." I nodded, yet anger simmered. Is family support too much to ask? Quote, Maya's eyes were fierce. You're building something no one believed you could. Let that be enough. She paused. But one day, they'll see. And until then, you have us. Her words settled over me like a blanket. Thank you. Back in the lab, I refocused on scaling efforts. The Munich partnership had been formalized into a joint development agreement. Pilot devices were en route to National Instruments labs for independent testing. I coordinated with their team via video conferences, reviewing test protocols and shipment timelines. Meanwhile, our legal counsel finalized the first patent grant. Our provisional filing matured into an international patent application. Each milestone fortified our position. Yet as spring turned to summer, I realized that scaling technology wasn't the only frontier I needed to conquer. I had to reconcile with the void my parents left behind, and the first step would be to face them directly, in person. A knock on my office door startled me. Dr. Kerr entered, holding an airline ticket. Geneva? I asked. He smiled. Your parents have arranged a dinner at the consulate. They want to congratulate you in person. My throat tightened. I haven't replied. He placed the ticket on my desk. Do you want to go? Closure might be what you need. I stared at the ticket. The city where I'd claimed my first big break. The place where their betrayal had sent me running. Now, an invitation. Not as a scholarship recipient, but as the founder of GraphenX. I inhaled, feeling the weight of choice. To return to the scene of my initial despair, armed with the power of my success, or to hold the line at a distance. My fingers closed around the ticket. I'll go. As I booked the trip, I realized science could heal the world, but only personal courage could heal the self. And this dinner would be my greatest experiment yet. The flight from Edinburgh to Geneva felt surreal. I clutched the boarding pass with my name printed in bold, Everly Sinclair, CEO of GraphenX Innovations. No more scholarship designation, no more student title. As the plane taxied, I thought of the path that brought me here. Betrayal, breakthroughs, building a company from scratch. Ahead lay the final test, facing my parents on familiar ground. In the Geneva airport, I spotted familiar landmarks, the turquoise Rhone River coursing through the terminal windows, banners for the summit still fluttering in departure halls. The world had moved on since last I stood here as a nervous postdoc. Now I was a leader in my field. I rode the tram to the consulate, the wheels clacking against tracks, glinting under the afternoon sun. My heart pounded with a mix of apprehension and resolve. Madame Fontaine, the Institute's counsel, had arranged for me to arrive a day early to meet logistics. She joined me as I stepped off the tram. Are you ready? She asked gently, her professional composure softening with empathy. I nodded, smoothing my blazer. As ready as I'll ever be. She handed me details of the dinner. A private reception in the consulate's dining room, vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, staff in formal livery. My parents would arrive shortly after sunset. Inside the consulate, the decor felt both grand and impersonal. Marble floors, towering oil paintings of past ambassadors, hush of diplomatic formality. I stood near a window overlooking the city as my parents arrived. Their entrance caught in the kaleidoscope of chandeliers. They looked unchanged, my mother's poised elegance, my father's tailored suit and crisp tie. They paused when they saw me. Their expressions flickered, surprise, pride, guarded vulnerability. My mother's lips curved in a practiced smile as she approached. Everly, she said, voice soft, you look remarkable. My father followed. Congratulations on GraphenX, the Financial Times said it best. His tone was cautious, as though testing the waters. I inhaled, steadying myself. Thank you for inviting me. They gestured to a seating area, plush velvet chairs arranged around a low table adorned with hors d'oeuvre. We took seats with deliberate grace, wafer-thin space between us as formal as any strangers. For a moment, silence hung, heavy, unresolved. My mother cleared her throat. Everly, we owe you an apology. We were wrong to revoke your scholarship. Our fears blinded us to your potential. My father nodded. We wanted you to follow the family path. We thought we were protecting you, but we failed. Pain and relief mingled in my chest. You did more than fail. You took my future. I felt betrayed. My voice trembled with held-back tears. But I found my path without you. My mother reached out, placing a hand on mine. We're sorry, truly, but we hope you can forgive us. I studied her, searching for sincerity. Her eyes glistened. I let my anger soften. I forgive you, I said. But I can't forget. I needed to prove that I decide my destiny. My father's brow furrowed, and you did. We're proud, if somewhat unsure how to celebrate the daughter we tried to hold back. I managed a small laugh. Start by calling me by my name. Know our daughter. And know that Graphinex is an extension of my dreams, not yours. They nodded, the tension easing. A waiter approached with champagne. To new beginnings, my mother toasted, raising her flute. I clinked glasses. To new beginnings. We sipped in companionable silence. Then my father ventured, will you stay with us while you're here? I hesitated. The decade-old wound still smarted, but I craved reconnection. Yes, I replied, but on my terms. He smiled, warmth shining through. Agreed. The dinner unfolded, tender poached salmon, asparagus drizzled in hollandaise, and a light lemon mousse that melted on my tongue. Conversation ranged from trivial to meaningful, family recollections, our shared past, and my vision for Graphinex. For the first time in years, laughter threaded our dialogue. When dessert concluded, my mother stood. I'd like to see Graphinex's headquarters. Would you show me? I studied her hopeful face. Memories flickered. Childhood trips to laboratories, my scribbled science fair blueprints, the pride in her eyes, before it curdled into disapproval. I took a breath. I'd like that. As we departed the consulate, I felt a shift, the power to forgive, the courage to rebuild trust, and the conviction that family could evolve. I led them to the tram, the city lights guiding our steps. Tomorrow, I'd open Graphinex's doors to the family who once closed mine. And in that moment, I realized true empowerment wasn't just professional success. It was the grace to embrace the past and shape a future on your own terms. The morning after our dinner, the tram ride from my parents' hotel to Graphinex's headquarters felt like a journey between two worlds. I led them into the warehouse, once stark and utilitarian, now transformed by rows of workstations, gleaming prototypes, and whiteboards dense with schematics. Light filtered through skylights, illuminating the team busily calibrating deposition chambers. My mother's eyes widened. This is incredible. I smiled. Welcome to Graphinex. I introduced them to the core team, Seth Lang, Javier Morales, Drive Priya Nair on analytics, and the rest, each offering polite greetings. My father observed the production line with keen interest. Asking technical questions, I answered with professional clarity. In the demonstration room, I showcased our latest model, a wafer assembly integrated into a sensor array for remote environmental monitoring. I activated the display, real-time data from simulated field conditions, temperature swings, humidity fluctuations, broadcast with the stability Graphinex promised. My mother's gaze lingered on the screen. You're saving lives with this, aren't you? I nodded, heart swelling. This technology can bring affordable medical diagnostics to underserved areas. We're partnering with NGOs to deploy sensors in rural clinics. Her hand found mine. I always knew you'd change the world. Pride and relief suffused me, but beneath it roiled new concerns. Just as we toasted reconciliation, I'd glimpsed shadows of corporate intrigue. News alerts on my phone about Silicon Edge, a rival startup racing to patent similar lattice techniques. Their aggressive IP filings threatened to muddy our waters. After the tour, I guided my parents to a quiet lounge for coffee. As we sipped, I confessed, there's a storm on the horizon. Silicon Edge just filed an emergency patent claim on dynamic lattice modulation. My father furrowed his brow. What does that mean for Graphinex? It means potential litigation, delays, and resource drains. We need to strengthen our patent portfolio and accelerate our product launch. My mother's eyes reflected concern. What can I do? She asked. I paused, struck by her genuine offer. Your influence matters. If you could connect us with contacts at the European Patent Office or with legal allies, that would help. She nodded resolutely. Consider it done. As they left the facility, the weight of leadership settled on me anew. Family support was no longer a distant hope. It was an active alliance. But aligning personal and professional worlds carried risks. The afternoon brought an unexpected invite, a roundtable with European Commission advisors on sustainable technology funding. Participation required a concise presentation on Graphenex's impact, an opportunity to secure grants and influence policy. But it clashed with an urgent board meeting to discuss Silicon Edge's filings. I convened the executive team, Maya, Dr. Kerr on video link, and our legal counsel. We weighed the options: send a deputy to the commission and prioritize the board, or handle both personally, risking burnout. Maya spoke first. I can represent us at the commission. You need to lead the board discussion. I inhaled. Let's do that. Maya, you lead at Brussels. I'll head the board here. Tasks delegated, I turned to legal counsel. Prepare a preemptive patent objection brief. We counterclaim on novelty grounds using our international patents. They nodded, already drafting. That evening, I flew to Brussels, my parents' presence still a comforting echo. Maya delivered our policy presentation flawlessly. Graphenex's vision for low-carbon electronics, socio-economic benefits, and a proposed research consortium. The Commission offered to expedite funding if we spearheaded a pan-European initiative. I returned to Edinburgh to find the board had advanced our case. Silicon Edge's injunction was paused pending review, and our counterclaims had been filed. The timing was critical. In the final hours before bed, I reflected on the week's whirlwind: family reconciliation, corporate assaults, policy influence, and venture building. Everly Sinclair had crossed borders, personal and professional, and emerged stronger. But as dawn approached, a fresh dilemma loomed. Should Graphenex pursue an IPO or maintain private strategic control? Each path held promises and perils. And the decision would define the company's future, and mine. The first light of dawn filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Graphenex's executive suite, casting long shadows across polished oak floors. I stood at the edge of the balcony, coffee warming my hands as I gazed out over the city. The decision weighed on me. Take Graphenex public, or keep it private. Each path carried profound implications for control, for growth, for the integrity of our vision. Inside the suite, the board had already convened. Investors from the initial seed round sat around a broad conference table, their faces a tapestry of hopeful excitement and cautious calculation. On the holographic screen above them, our CFO, Diana Chen, presented financial projections for both scenarios. Under private expansion, she explained, we retain full equity control but would rely on additional private funding rounds, potentially diluting early investors by up to 15% over the next 2 years. Under an IPO, she continued, we could raise upwards of $200 million in capital, enabling rapid global expansion, but public markets bring shareholder pressures and regulatory scrutiny. I swallowed, heart pounding. I want to hear your thoughts, I said, stepping forward. I know this isn't just a financial decision, it's about our values and our future. Investor feedback was split. Marcus Vogel from National Instruments, still a strong partner, leaned forward. An IPO would position Graphenex as a market leader and secure our partnership with public validation. It also provides liquidity for employees and early investors. On the other side, Elena Rossi, a private equity partner who valued long-term stability, shook her head. Public companies face quarterly performance pressures. We'll end up optimizing for short-term returns rather than sustainable impact. The debate stretched on, questions about compliance costs, governance structures, market timing, and even branding considerations. As the discussion unfolded, I couldn't help but reflect on my journey. From a scholarship student to a summit speaker to a CEO, public scrutiny was the last barrier. Did I have the strength to weather that storm? When the board adjourned for a brief break, I retreated to my office, the weight of the choice pressing on me. I opened a secure video chat with Maya. They're divided, I said, rubbing my temples. I don't know which path aligns with our mission. Maya's face appeared, calm yet concerned. Do you want rapid scale or careful stewardship? You built this to change lives, not just to chase valuations. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I know. But we could impact healthcare, environmental monitoring soon. The capital could fuel that. She placed a hand to her lips. Couldn't we do a hybrid approach? A smaller IPO, retain majority control, and use funds for targeted projects? Her suggestion sparked a glimmer of possibility. A controlled IPO? Sell 20% of shares? We'd raise enough for phase 2 expansion and maintain governance control. Maya nodded. It's a compromise. The board will appreciate feasibility. I closed the call, feeling clearer. Returning to the boardroom, I outlined the hybrid proposal. A limited float of 20%, governance safeguards in the charter, and earmarked use of capital for specific projects, rural medical deployment and clean energy sensor networks. The board's tension eased. Diana's numbers aligned with the plan, and even Elena saw merit in balancing scale with stability. Marcus raised his glass of water. I like it. It's ambitious yet controlled. We voted, a unanimous go-ahead. The IPO process would begin next quarter, with a target raise of $150 million. Relief and exhilaration coursed through me as we celebrated. Yet beneath the euphoria, a flicker of doubt remained. Public markets meant public scrutiny, where every misstep, every delay would make headlines. That evening, as I packed to fly to New York City for initial roadshow meetings, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. So proud of you. Safe travels. Love, Mom. My heart clenched. A simple message, laden with meaning. I texted back, thank you. Your support means everything. In the taxi to the airport, I thought of the girl who first read that letter in a London mailbox, who fled to Edinburgh with nothing but hope. Now I was a woman commanding boardrooms in multiple continents. Yet the journey wasn't over. In New York, I'd face analysts skeptical of a science-driven startup, regulators probing our filings, and journalists eager for both triumph and scandal. The public stage awaited. Bright lights and hard questions. But I was ready. As the plane took off, I looked out at the shrinking cityscape and whispered to the rising stars. This is just the beginning. Tomorrow, I'd step onto the global financial stage and prove that GraphineX's vision was more than a company. It was a movement. The skyline of Manhattan stretched out before me as the helicopter descended toward the helipad atop One World Trade Center. New York City's pulse throbbed beneath. 100 languages, 1,000,000 ambitions. The city that never slept was about to witness my entrance onto the global financial stage. I stepped onto the rooftop, wind whipping my chestnut hair, and headed to the paneled boardroom for my first investor roadshow. Inside, a polished table curved around a panoramic window. Chairs sat empty, awaiting analysts from Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and several venture capital firms. My team, CFO Diana, Head of Communications Jenna Lopez, and Legal Counsel Madame Fontaine, were already there, laptops open, presentations queued. Jenna leaned over. They'll be here any minute. The press is camped outside. I inhaled deeply. Let's do this. When the door opened, a delegation of smartly dressed analysts entered, name tags glinting under the lights. I greeted each with a firm handshake, then took my place at the head of the table. Good morning. I'm Everly Sinclair, CEO of GraphineX Innovations. Thank you for joining us. Quote. I clicked to the first slide. A crisp logo etched over a background of graphene lattices. The presentation flowed. Company milestones, pilot yields, strategic partnerships, and the planned $150 million IPO raise. I detailed our allocation. 40% to expand manufacturing, 30% to R&D, 20% to global market entry, and 10% reserved for employee stock options. Questions came quickly, some technical, some financial. What's your burn rate post-IPO? How will you manage supply chain risks? Can you scale while maintaining margins? Each was met with precise answers, reinforced by data and risk mitigation plans. Midway, an analyst from Morgan Stanley asked, Dr. Sinclair, as a female CEO in tech, do you expect gender dynamics to influence investor sentiment? I paused, then replied, diverse leadership enhances innovation. My team's diversity is our strength, and I see no barrier between gender and success in building world-changing technology. The room nodded, respect evident in their faces. However, as the session ended, Jenna's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. You might want to see this. On her screen was a breaking news alert from TechSphere: Graphenex CEO accused of insider trading in early share allocations. My heart seized. I hadn't received any notice. I opened the link, and my stomach dropped. An anonymous tipster alleged I'd used confidential investor info from Geneva to inform share pricing. I stood, voice steady but mind racing. This is false. We have compliance records and audit trails to prove fair market practices. Please hold off on any judgments until we investigate. Madame Fontaine's calm voice cut in. I'll issue a formal statement. We'll have the compliance department verify all communications and pricing metrics. The analysts rose, murmuring among themselves. The event ended with cautious optimism. The buzz was mixed. The insider trading accusation threatened to overshadow our achievements. Later that afternoon, back at our temporary New York office, I convened with the team. We pored over email logs, pricing memos, and board minutes. It became clear the allegations stemmed from a misinterpretation of preliminary pricing models shared in non-public channels. We drafted a transparent report, timelines, data, and attestations from third-party auditors. It would be released that evening. I watched as our PR team prepared social media posts, press releases, and a media Q&A. The moment of truth arrived when the statement went live. Within hours, TechSphere published our full report and retracted the claim. The article concluded, Graphenex Innovations maintains compliance integrity, and no evidence supports the allegations. The public narrative shifted back in our favor, though the initial damage lingered. Exhausted, I allowed myself a moment to breathe. That night, I gazed at the New York skyline from the rooftop lounge, city lights reflecting in my eyes. My phone buzzed. An unexpected message from an old friend at university, Tobias Reed. Heard the news. Proud of how you handled it. I smiled, comforted by the personal connection amid corporate turbulence. Yet in my inbox lay another email, a confidential note from our manufacturing partner in Shenzhen. They requested an urgent call. A production anomaly had emerged, unexpected lattice faults traced to raw graphite impurities. We had to address it swiftly to avoid supply chain disruptions post-IPO. As I prepared for the late-night call across time zones, I realized the CEO's life was a constant juggling of crises, public perception, legal battles, technical nightmares, all while leading a company that could reshape industries. That night I found my reflection in the office window, city lights haloing my silhouette. We did it, I whispered, voice soft, but the real work begins now. I awoke to the stark light of dawn, a headache pulsing behind my eyes. The call from Shenzhen had kept me awake until the early hours. Graphite impurities in the source material had compromised the lattice integrity of our graphene sheets, threatening to derail production forecasts for the next quarter. In the high-stakes world of semiconductors, delays translated into lost contracts and shaken investor confidence. I gathered my team over video conference, the head of procurement, Mei-Ling Zhao, our manufacturing liaison Chen Wu, and Javier Moreno overseeing quality assurance. Mei-Ling's face appeared on screen, framed by shelves stacked with material samples. Ms. Sinclair, Mei-Ling began, voice steady. We traced the impurity to a change in the supplier's processing batch. They switched to a lower-grade purification solvent to cut costs. Our contract stipulates a minimum 99.999% carbon purity. I leaned forward. We need them to ship compliant material immediately. In the meantime, what are our buffer inventories like? Quote, Chen answered, we have 2 weeks' worth of wafers in the pipeline, but beyond that, production grinds to a halt. My heart tightened. We can't afford more than a 5-day delay. Javier, can you reroute wafer production to our alternate line in Munich? He nodded. We'll need to requalify the substrate alignments for the Munich process, but it's doable. We'll redeploy a team and calibrate within 72 hours. The plan took shape. Expedite Munich line setup, negotiate emergency shipments of high-grade graphite directly to our European partner, and enforce penalties on the Shenzhen supplier for breach of quality. I closed the meeting, adrenaline propelling me into action. I called Madame Fontaine to draft a contractual amendment invoking rapid replacement clauses and penalty fees. Then I drafted an email to the Munich plant manager, outlining the urgent need and requesting overnight cargo clearance for equipment. By midday, I hopped on a conference with our logistics coordinator. Container loading schedules, customs paperwork, and expedited flight bookings blurred into a frantic puzzle. Each piece had to fit seamlessly. That evening, I caught a flight to Munich, my third trip in a week. Landing in the crisp air, I raced to the facility. The midnight shift technicians greeted me with weary nods. "Dr. Sinclair," Javier greeted me, "we've begun calibrations. The substrate alignments are within acceptable margins after 2 cycles." I surveyed the rows of deposition chambers and conveyor modules. My mind raced with contingency charts, risk matrices, and cost analyses. Yet amid the technical chaos, I felt an underlying sense of purpose. This was the crucible in which GraphenX's resilience was tested. 2 days later, the first Munich batch came off the line, wafer yields at 78%, close enough to sustain our commitments until Shenzhen resumed compliant shipments. Relief washed over the team. I commended them, but the victory was bittersweet. Weeks of frantic coordination, millions in unplanned expenses, and reputational risk. Back in Edinburgh via red-eye flight, I collapsed in my office. Exhaustion clung to me, yet sleep remained elusive. I stared at the wall, where a framed quote from Marie Curie read, "Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood." But I felt fear. The fear of imperfection, of letting down the thousands depending on our technology, of disappointing myself. I picked up my phone and called Maya. "Everly, are you okay?" she asked after 2 rings. I exhaled. "We're back online, but this shook me." She was silent for a beat. "You did what you had to. You led your team through a global crisis. That's what leaders do." Her words anchored me. Thank you, I needed that. As dawn approached, I drafted a memo to investors, transparent disclosure of the supply chain incident, summary of mitigation efforts, and assurances of future safeguards, dual source procurement, enhanced quality audits, and contingency factories. I hit send before second-guessing. Within hours, the investor relations team reported calm, shareholders appreciated the transparency, the market stabilized, and our stock held firm. That weekend, I allowed myself a rare moment of respite. I wandered through Edinburgh's botanical gardens, sunlight filtering through budding branches. The promise of spring mirrored my own resilience. After winter's harsh trials, new growth emerged. I paused by a magnolia tree, petals unfurling in pastel triumph. I closed my eyes, breathing in the scent of promise. GraphenX had weathered another storm, but my journey was far from over. Ahead lay regulatory reviews for the IPO, global expansion negotiations, and the ever-present challenge of maintaining scientific integrity amid commercial pressures. Stepping back onto the path through the gardens, I whispered to myself, "No storm lasts forever. Keep moving forward." Regulatory scrutiny descended upon GraphenX like an unrelenting storm. Shortly after we filed our IPO prospectus with the SEC and the European Securities and Markets Authority, inquiries arrived. Environmental impact reports, supply chain audits, disclosures on foreign manufacturing partnerships. The spotlight of public markets brought a new arena of challenges: compliance, transparency, and the risk of minor missteps becoming headline scandals. I sat in the conference room at dawn, flanked by Madame Fontaine and our head of compliance, Lars Herzog. She fired off emails to regulators in Brussels. He pored over sections of the prospectus. "We need to preemptively address concerns about our Chinese supply chain," Lars said, voice taut. "Given geopolitical tensions, regulators will want assurances on data security and traceability." Madame Fontaine nodded. "I've drafted a submission outlining our data encryption protocols, third-party audits, and the dual sourcing strategy for critical materials. We'll file by end of day." Quote. As they worked, I gazed at the framed policy commitment, GraphenX's pledge to environmental stewardship and ethical sourcing. Our success was built on innovation and integrity alike. Late afternoon, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unexpected number, the UK Environment Agency. My stomach tightened as I answered. "Dr. Sinclair," a measured voice began, We're conducting a routine review of graphene-related manufacturing emissions. We'd like to schedule a site inspection. I braced. Of course. We'll accommodate your team at your earliest convenience. The call ended, and I exhaled. Another layer of oversight. We had to ensure every facet of our operations, from solvent disposal to energy usage, passed muster. Over the next week, the GrapheneX facility hummed with preparations, safety audits, environmental sampling, and staff training on inspector protocols. We welcomed the agency's delegation, led by Dr. Eleanor Finch, a respected regulator known for her balanced approach. On inspection day, I greeted Dr. Finch at the cleanroom entrance, garbed in full protective gear. She moved methodically, clipboard in hand, questioning technicians, examining fume hoods, and reviewing waste treatment logs. At midday, she paused at our wastewater recycling station. Your solvent recovery rate is impressive, she noted, lifting her goggles. However, I have one concern. Trace ions detected in the effluent suggest incomplete capture of etching chemicals. My heart sank. Even trace ions could lead to fines or mandated process changes. I replied promptly, we're aware. We've scheduled an upgrade to our distillation units and implemented a tertiary filtration step, effective next Monday. We can provide test results immediately after validation. She studied me, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded. I appreciate your transparency. We'll withhold any enforcement actions pending the upgrades. Relief swept through me. Integrity and quick action had turned a potential setback into an opportunity to demonstrate commitment to best practices. That evening, as the team celebrated our regulatory win, minimal corrective actions, no fines, I reflected on the journey from scholarship revocation to corporate leadership. Each challenge had shaped GrapheneX's culture of resilience. Just as we thought the regulatory gauntlet was behind us, an email arrived from Dr. Alistair Kerr. He'd been approached by Sir Malcolm Hawthorne, chair of the Cambridge Science Council, inviting me to join a prestigious advisory panel on emerging technologies. His note read, Your leadership at GrapheneX exemplifies the intersection of scientific excellence and ethical governance. The council could benefit from your perspective. My chest tightened at the honor. To influence policy at Cambridge, where I'd once been a visiting fellow, was an opportunity to shape the future of materials, science, and mentor the next generation. Yet balancing this alongside a public company looming on the edge of an IPO posed a dilemma. How much bandwidth could I spare? I discussed the invitation with the executive team. Some urged caution. Board responsibilities demanded focus ahead of the IPO. Others, including Maya, believed the role would enhance GrapheneX's credibility. Maya's voice rang clear. Your voice on that council will amplify our mission. It aligns with our values and elevates our profile. After sleepless nights weighing the commitment, I accepted. The prospect of contributing to science policy, ensuring ethical frameworks for emerging materials, rekindled my passion beyond the lab. The next morning, I drafted my acceptance letter to Sir Malcolm, envisioning my dual role as CEO and policy advisor. I realized that leadership meant not only steering a company, but also contributing to the broader ecosystem. As I pressed send, I thought of my parents, once fearful of my independence, now unexpectedly proud. I hoped they saw that my journey was more than personal triumph. It was about forging pathways for others. The regulator's call, the advisory invitation, each step reaffirmed that impact lay in both action and influence. And as GrapheneX prepared to open its doors to public investors, I prepared to open my mind to the responsibilities of stewardship on a global stage. The morning sun slanted through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our new Manhattan Investor Relations office. Even weeks after the IPO launch, the hum of activity remained relentless. Share prices had opened strong, but minor dips and market chatter kept us on edge. Analysts scrutinized every earnings estimate. Headlines parsed every quote. I slipped into the seat at the head of the conference table, greeted by the familiar faces of CFO Diana Chen and head of IR Jenna Lopez. Their screens glowed with real-time market dashboards and investor sentiment polls. Morning, Everly, Jenna said, her tone apologetic. We're seeing a pullback. Statement by the Department of Commerce raised questions about export controls on nanomaterials. My heart tightened. Regulatory shifts could hamper shipments to key Asian markets. I opened my laptop, scanning the notice. The Commerce Department had proposed new export categories for two-dimensional materials, mandating licenses for anything beyond laboratory analyses. How severe? I asked. Diana pointed to a graph. We risk losing 25% of projected overseas revenue unless we secure licenses within 30 days. I exhaled slowly. Okay, draft a compliance plan. Deploy our legal team to file for exemptions based on our medical applications. And prepare talking points. Position Graphene X as essential for healthcare diagnostics, not defense. They nodded, diving into action. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Cambridge Science Council panel, next week. My advisory role loomed, requiring travel and time. Balancing CEO duties with policy work felt increasingly precarious. At midday, an invitation popped up, a luncheon with Dr. Alistair Kerr at the Princeton Club. He offered mentorship, but his message hinted at broader opportunities, academic collaborations that could advance Graphene X's R&D pipeline. Yet carving out hours for research felt impossible amidst market volatility. The afternoon brought a surprise, a personal email from my father's law firm. They'd drafted a prenuptial agreement for my upcoming marriage, news I hadn't yet shared with my parents. Even as I navigated corporate challenges, private life surged to the forefront. I stared at the email, Everly Sinclair and Benjamin Armitage. My fiancé's name appeared in the subject. Benjamin, a fellow researcher turned tech entrepreneur, had proposed under the cherry blossoms in Kyoto 6 months ago. Our worlds had collided in the crucible of Graphene X's early conferences. My chest fluttered with warmth and panic. Marriage. Another milestone, another responsibility. I drafted a reply. Thank you for the draft. Let's discuss details tonight. Then I hesitated, recalling the uneven relationship with my parents. Would bringing them into this mean reconciling with family traditions, or forging new ones? Before I could dwell further, my phone lit up with a message from Benjamin himself. Everly, big news. Our joint patent for biomaterial integration just published. Investors love it. Dinner tonight? Quote. I smiled, then frowned at my reflection in the window. Life demanded balance across corporate trials, policy commitments, and personal happiness. Evening descended as I returned to my Manhattan apartment, a minimalist loft with city lights shimmering like constellations. Benjamin greeted me with a grin and a bottle of champagne. He enveloped me in a hug. Congratulations, he whispered. This is your moment. We toasted our joint patent, our love, and future ambitions. Yet as corks popped and laughter filled the room, my mind drifted to the looming export license crisis, my advisory panel preparations, and the prenup waiting in my drafts. Benjamin's gaze followed me. You seem distracted. I reached for his hand, just thinking about everything. Graphene X, Cambridge, us. It's a lot. He nodded, eyes kind. We'll figure it out together. Outside, the city roared. Inside, I felt the weight of every role. CEO, advisor, partner, innovator. Each demanded time, passion, and integrity. Later, as Benjamin and I reviewed the prenup over low jazz, my phone pinged an urgent alert. I opened it with a sinking heart. Urgent Bright Matrix Labs announces a rival technology with purportedly lower production costs and similar performance metrics. I stared at the message. Another competitor on the horizon, claiming to have circumvented our patented processes. My chest tightened. Always a new challenge, a new battle. Benjamin touched my arm. What is it? I took a deep breath. Bright Matrix Labs. They've launched a competitor. His eyes hardened. This isn't good. I nodded, resolve hardening in my chest. No, it's not. As the lights of the city glimmered through the window, I realized I stood at a crossroads. Next steps for Graphene X, my role in science policy, my future with Benjamin, and the fight to protect my life's work. One clear truth remained. I would face this head-on. Slate-gray clouds gathered over Manhattan as I descended into the concrete canyon of Wall Street. My day began with the looming crisis. Bright Matrix Labs' announcement of a rival graphene-based process. Their press release was bold, promising 20% lower manufacturing costs, and approaching our performance metrics. The insinuation was clear. Graphene X had a competitor nipping at its heels. In the investor relations office, DVR screens flickered with headlines. I joined CFO Diana Chen and legal counsel Madame Fontaine for a crisis huddle. "They're claiming our patent is too broad, and they'll challenge it in court," Diana said, brows knit. Madame Fontaine tapped her red pen against the table. "We'll file an injunction. But first, we need to verify our patent claims are watertight. I suggest a forensic audit of Bright Matrix's proprietary documentation. If they've crossed our claims, we take action." I exhaled. "Let's do it." Simultaneously, prepare a public statement affirming our leadership in graphene innovation. Emphasize our growing client base in medical devices, environmental sensors, and telecommunications. And schedule a press conference within 48 hours. They dispatched teams immediately, one to coordinate with patent attorneys, another to draft the statement. Within hours, newswires carried Graphenex's message. Commitment to innovation, quality, and ethical practices remains unwavering. We will defend our IP vigorously. As we prepped for the legal offensive, my mind drifted to the weekend ahead. Benjamin and I had planned a retreat in upstate New York to recharge. It felt like a lifetime since I'd disconnected from boardrooms and court filings. That evening, I flew to Boston for an emergency hearing on the injunction motion. The courtroom was austere, the tension palpable. Bright Matrix's legal team arrayed their evidence, process flow diagrams, chemical analysis data, and third-party manufacturing reports claiming independent discovery. When my counsel presented our counter-argument, the heat in the room rose. We demonstrated specific molecular layer processes, match points that directly aligned with our patent's unique method claims. We called expert witnesses who attested that Bright Matrix's process could not replicate our proprietary passivation step without infringing. After hours of testimony, the judge recessed. In the corridor, I felt the weight of every innovation, every sleepless night, and every risk taken to bring Graphenex to this point. Benjamin's message pinged. "Good luck. You've got this." That night I returned to the Manhattan loft, nerves taut. Benjamin greeted me with a warm embrace. "How did it go?" he asked, eyes searching mine. I exhaled, relief mingling with fatigue. "We had compelling evidence. I think we'll get the injunction." He smiled, relief softening his features. "I knew you'd win." In the morning, the court granted our preliminary injunction. Bright Matrix's product launch was delayed, and their stock dipped. The victory reaffirmed Graphenex's position, but the legal battle was far from over. The following days blended into a flurry of strategy sessions, negotiating settlement terms, exploring cross-licensing deals, and steering Graphenex's product roadmap to maintain technical lead. I had little time to reflect until Friday evening, when I arrived at the lakeside cabin in the Catskills. The retreat's silence enveloped me. Pine trees swayed, and the water mirrored the fading pink sky. Benjamin and I hiked a deserted trail, our footsteps muffled by pine needles. I spoke of the week's intensity, the courtroom drama, and the exhaustion. He stopped, turning to me. "Everly, when was the last time you rested?" I paused, realizing with a pang that I'd nearly forgotten what rest felt like. I can't remember." He took my hand. "Promise me you'll take time for yourself." "For us." I squeezed his hand, tears prickling my eyes. "I promise." As dusk settled, we sat by a campfire, the crackling flames a soothing rhythm. I leaned into him, letting the warmth seep into my bones. The next morning, I awoke before dawn and walked to the lake. In the stillness, my thoughts cleared. I reflected on my journey. The girl who fled London, the scientist who seized every opportunity, the CEO who navigated storms. Each chapter had been defined by challenges, and I'd met them with courage. But moving forward, I realized, meant more than professional victories. It meant nurturing relationships, honoring personal commitments, and ensuring that my life's work enriched not only industries, but also the community around me. As I returned to the cabin, sunlight filtering through autumn leaves, I felt renewed, a balance between ambition and presence. Graphenex would continue to push boundaries, and I would continue to embrace every role fully: scientist, leader, partner, and advocate for change. The dawn light of spring shimmered off the glass facade of Tokyo's International Convention Center. I stepped onto the stage, the roar of thousands of attendees reverberating through the vast auditorium. This was Graphenex's global launch event, our moment to unveil the G Prime series, next-generation graphene-enhanced semiconductors ready for mass-market integration. Months of relentless R&D, pilot production, IP battles, and strategic partnerships had led to this day. Behind me, a rotating display showcased wafer samples, performance graphs, and embedded prototypes in smartphones, medical sensors, and environmental monitors. I inhaled deeply and faced the audience, representing tech giants, venture capitalists, government officials, and media outlets. Their eyes reflected anticipation and scrutiny. "Welcome to the dawn of a new era in semiconductor technology," I began, my voice steady. "I'm Dr. Everly Sinclair, CEO of Graphenex Innovations. Today, we introduce the G Prime series, silencing inefficiencies, powering sustainable futures, and redefining what's possible." As I walked through the keynote, I highlighted technical breakthroughs, atomic layer passivation enhancements yielding 18% lower energy consumption, noise filters enabling cleaner signal transmission, and scalable manufacturing processes ensuring cost efficiency. Real-world case studies illustrated life-saving diagnostics in rural clinics and precision environmental sensors in hurricane-prone regions. Live demos engaged the audience. A smartphone held by a volunteer displayed augmented reality overlays powered by G Prime chips. A medical device scanned a simulated blood sample, delivering diagnostic data with unmatched speed. Applause thundered. I smiled, sensing the culmination of a journey that began with stolen scholarship and endless nights in the lab. Yet in that tide of applause lay a deeper truth. Success wasn't a destination. It was a series of decisions that shaped a legacy. Later, backstage, I met with partners, Sony's CTO, Mitsubishi's head of energy solutions, and healthcare executives from Osaka University Hospital. They spoke of pilot deployments, customization requests, and joint development agreements. Graphenex's position as an industry leader had solidified. A staff ushered me aside with urgent news. My mother and father had flown in to attend the event. Their seats, VIP, front row, awaited them. For the first time since our Geneva reconciliation, they stood to witness my vision unfold. I paused, recalling our last conversation on the tram in Geneva. Their pride was evident, yet I wondered if they understood the magnitude of what lay ahead, not only for Graphenex, but for my life beyond the lab. The event concluded with a gala reception overlooking Tokyo Bay. Lanterns drifted on the water as night fell. I navigated through crowds, shaking hands and exchanging smiles, until I found my parents standing near the railing. "Everly," my mother said, her voice thick with emotion, "that was extraordinary." My father's eyes glistened under lantern light. "You've surpassed every expectation, even ours." I took a breath. "Thank you for being here." My mother smiled. "We wouldn't miss this for anything." I gestured to the bay. "Look at those lanterns, each one a symbol of hope. Graphenex is my lantern to the world, lighting paths in science and service." My parents nodded, pride radiating. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A notification from Benjamin. "Happy birthday, my love. Dinner reservations at the Sky Lounge." I glanced at my watch. It was midnight. My 32nd birthday. My parents hadn't known. I grinned. "Happy birthday," Mom said, noticing my expression. I laughed. "I didn't tell you." My father raised an eyebrow. "You didn't tell us?" I shook my head. "But Benjamin did." Mom grabbed my hand. "We'll celebrate together." As we walked toward the Sky Lounge, a sleek tower overlooking the city, I reflected on the twists of fate: betrayal, breakthrough, building a legacy, and finding love. Each chapter had shaped me into a leader, a partner, and a catalyst for change. At the lounge, Benjamin waited, rose in hand. He pulled me into an embrace. "You did it," he whispered. I kissed him, warmth filling my chest. We did it. We toasted under the starlit sky. Family, friends, colleagues, all gathered. My parents raised their glasses in unison with mine. In that moment, I recognized that true success wasn't measured in patents or stock valuations. It was in the lives touched, the trust earned, and the love shared. As confetti rose and cameras flashed, I looked at Benjamin, Maya, my parents, and the GrapheneX team, my lantern bearers in this ever-unfolding story. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new breakthroughs, and new chapters. But tonight, under the lantern-lit sky, I welcomed the future, letter by letter, code by code, human story by human story. The first light of dawn broke over the Atlantic as I gazed out the cabin's window, waves lapping against the hull of our private yacht. The gentle rocking and salt-kissed breeze offered a moment of reflection, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of my life's journey. From a dream deferred by my parents' betrayal to founding GrapheneX and leading a global technology revolution, every step had led to this moment on the open sea. The previous night's celebration in Tokyo still resonated in my mind, laughter echoing under lantern-lit skies, the warm embrace of family and friends, and Benjamin's radiant smile. Now I stood here with him, my partner in life and in vision, considering the chapters yet unwritten. Behind us, the GrapheneX team slept below decks, exhausted but exhilarated from weeks of strategic planning sessions in ideal settings, board meetings, followed by brainstorming workshops amidst ocean vistas. Our next mission, the inaugural GrapheneX Scholarship Foundation, aimed at empowering aspiring scientists who, like me, needed opportunity and support to chase their own dreams. As the sun climbed higher, I convened a small gathering on deck. Benjamin, Maya, Dr. Kerr, and Madame Fontaine joined me around a teak table lacquered by salt and sunlight. Today, we set to sea on the Odyssey initiative, I announced, voice strong with purpose. This voyage symbolizes our commitment to exploration, of technology, of human potential, and of the uncharted frontiers ahead. Maya nodded, eyes bright. The Foundation's first grants will be awarded next month, supporting postgraduate research in sustainable materials. Dr. Kerr smiled, adjusting his jacket against the sea breeze. And I'll be leading the scientific advisory panel, ensuring we foster not only innovation but ethical stewardship. Madame Fontaine added, I'm drafting the legal framework for the Foundation to secure endowment funding and international partnerships. Benjamin stepped forward, offering a glass of sparkling champagne. To the Odyssey initiative, may it light the way for tomorrow's pioneers. I raised my glass, heart swelling, to courage, to discovery, and to the stories yet to be told. We toasted, the clink of crystal echoing over the water. Later, as the yacht sailed into the horizon, I retreated to the bow, the wind whipping my hair. I reflected on the milestones etched in my memory. The London letterbox that first ignited rebellion, the Midnight Lab breakthroughs in Edinburgh, the Geneva summit that validated my work, the corporate alliances, public battles, and regulatory triumphs, the personal vows and shared dreams. But the legacy I now sought extended beyond GrapheneX's IPO, or the patents that bore my name. It lay in the scholarship of tomorrow's scientists, in the policies shaped by ethical considerations, and in the community uplifted by equitable access to technology. I closed my eyes and felt the salt air fill my lungs. The sea's vastness reminded me of the possibilities still awaiting discovery, new materials to unlock, new challenges to overcome, and new stories to inspire hope. A soft chime signaled an incoming message on my phone. It was from the Foundation's first grantee, a promising engineer in Kenya. Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. You've changed my world. My eyes glistened. I typed a quick reply. This is just the beginning. We believe in you. Then I pocketed the phone. Looking out at the endless blue, I whispered to the horizon. My journey is not defined by any single breakthrough, but by the countless doors we open for each other. And now, with GrapheneX's Odyssey initiative, we'll chart new courses together. I turned to face my team, smiles reflecting in their eyes, a mosaic of cultures, disciplines, and shared purpose. Together, we embrace the dawn of a new voyage, ready to write the next chapters in science, innovation, and human stories. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.